Welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. For today, we're going to show you something special, so make sure to stick around for all the best bans. And to make sure that you're around for the upcoming content, feel free to hit the like and the sub button. And with that, enough of the pre-talk and let's go towards the champions. On the first spot we have the Veigar. He's the newly released champion and he's quite annoying to deal with. The reason is quite simple. His cage is just overpowered in skirmishes. Similar to Ziggs, he can block off an entire pathway and just make you unable to play. Especially if he is able to split the team apart for an extended period of time, you will see that he truly shines in those scenarios. And not only that, he can do so super easily by building the right items. Veigar is one of the champions that loves movement speed, and by getting enough movement speed, for example, Dead Man's Blade, which sounds quite weird but is such a good item on him, and the Righteous Glory, he just makes sure you'll be caught in that cage. And for the first time you'll have your summoner spells, maybe for the second time you'll have your Quicksilver, but for the third time what do? And his cage cooldown is rather low. And on the flip side, since he's a new champion, a lot of people will first time him, and that's even in ranked. So if you think about that one from a logical aspect, you should permaban this champion so he isn't on your team. But let's get back to Veigar players who know how to play. And it's not only the cage that makes him dangerous. Once you're caught by any form of CC by his team, he might send you back to the fountain, because he gets a lot of AP quite fast. And this is also the reason he's allowed to build quite different than other mages. He has an infinitely scaling passive ability that grants him AP whenever he last hits something with his first ability or hits an enemy champion with a spell. And even better is the fact that if he participates in a kill from his teammates, he gets even more AP gifted on top. Which means he just needs one item with a lot of cooldown reduction, some tanky stats and then a Rabadon. Then he'll have 1 bazillion AP and he's gonna kill you, so sounds fun, right? And with that we move on to our question of the day. A lot of players have different or specific ways of banning champions. Are you a player that bans meta champions, or do you prefer banning champions due to past experience against that champion? For example, you've been stomped by Zed, so Zed must be permabanned. Get rid of this champion, I don't want to see him anymore. Let me know in the comments below. And now let's move on to a champion that made me emotionally question myself a few times. And I'm talking about Diana. A mechanically skilled Diana, so basically not me, is just something else. She adds the X factor to the game and you never know if it's truly over. What I mean by that is, if a Diana gets one opportunity to go into an entire team with a fully charged ultimate, you never know if you truly win the game. Oh, and maybe some context to this. What I meant by this is, you're heavily winning the game and the Diana is jumping into you. And you made the mistake of allowing her to hit everyone on your team at once. And now you were winning in the past, but now you're losing in just one instant, which is kinda weird, and this is the X factor I'm talking about. And this is something also other champions like for example a Vayne have. You can just never rule them out to come back into the game. And if you take this comeback idea into mind, there's even something better. Even on low HP, she's an absolute nightmare to deal with. She might just turn on you and destroy you in an instant, because Rod of Ages and her second ability are quite fun in terms of tankiness. Mage, by the way. And now let's move on from a mage to an enchanter. This champion is probably the most annoying champion you can ever think of in the League of Legends PC variant. You can spam the Lothar all the time and annoy people until they don't want to play anymore. But for this game it's quite a difference. Lulu is an entire walking wardrobe in terms of items in the form of a champion. Once she gets access to just one item, the Ardent Sensor, the target she empowers, especially in AD carry, turns into a Gatling gun. The bonus damage and attack speed are just insane. It's just multiple items on one champion that make another champion into 2 champions or maybe even 3. And specifically for that, the Vayne Lulu combo is insane. Do you know how much damage Pix is dealing? This thing is just not balanced, it's not possible. And since we're already talking about this X factor, it is even worse if there's a Lulu in the game, and one of the other champions I just mentioned. It just makes things unbearable and unsafe, if you want to think about it that way. However, it's quite safe for people on her team, because her primary job is to keep an ally alive and empowering his damage. And the only thing she has to look out for is using the spells at the right time. Don't be like one of those enchanters who presses the abilities just for fun. Every ability has a purpose, and every ability on cooldown can be your downfall. For example, just wasting any of your spells could be abused in lane quite heavily. Let's just picture a moment in which you use your second and third ability for fun. For fun I mean there's no real purpose for you to use them. Nobody's taking damage and you don't want to get anything done for them, but you feel the need of using them for I don't know what reason. So the enemy takes notice of that and takes that into consideration and goes in for a trade. Now, since you're not able to give your ally any assistance in the form of a spell, you can't apply picks to them. And if it's, for example, an AD carry who's primarily dependent on auto attacks, which means he has a lot of attack speed, he's losing a lot of damage because you're unable to buff him. And on top of that, he's taking way more damage because you're unable to use any shielding ability on him. So please be more mindful of the way you use spells, and if you play against people that use those spells in the way I just described, basically wasting, please kill them in game. They can't do anything, they use their spells, so they're useless. Go for it. And now let's move on to another annoying champion on this list. And for this we have Camille. She's basically been the permaban for all eternity in the competitive scene and just recently got changed so she isn't a jungler anymore. Her third ability doesn't grant her attack speed on monsters, so that time is over. But now Camille is a flex pick for the middle lane and the Baron lane. So be prepared to face her even in the middle lane as a control mage. It is going to happen, so please beware. And the most annoying thing about this champion is that Camille can always engage on you from any angle. Her third ability's range is nuts, and if she combines her third ability with a second ability to then ult you, well, she's basically engaging you from 3 to 4 screens, and your only available counterplay is A, knowing about it, and B, having a stasis, and C, maybe having teammates that play the game. And how many of these things are reasonable, especially C? I don't think many. But jokes aside. And there's also something that is quite special about this champion. Even if she's behind, she can utilize a full tank build and just isolate one target in a late game fight to win you the game. Because remember the things we said in the Veigar part? Isolating somebody and cutting the team away from somebody else, splitting a fight? She's able to do this with the ultimate ability. And now think back to the Veigar and think about how you can do this all the time with a low cooldown on a basic ability. How can you not consider this as annoying and busted? But there's also something about Camille that is really annoying during her laning phase. She can always use her second ability and poke you down, and she'll always escape from any jungle gank, similar to a Fiora. However, if she uses her third ability to go in, she is vulnerable to a gank, so please communicate this fast if your jungle is close by and abuse this. Otherwise, you're not going to kill her. And another quite neat mechanic you have to know about is her passive ability. Whenever it's up, if she attacks you with an auto attack or a first ability, she'll gain an adaptive shield. It blocks either magic damage or physical damage. And it remains for a brief duration until it goes on cooldown. So if you want to trade with her, make sure to not use any spell into the shield. It would be just a waste since it absorbs so much. Rather wait a bit and then hit her. For example, in the Renekton Camille matchup. On the PC version of the game, the empowered second ability of the Renekton removes all shielding and instantly hits through them. On the Wild Rift version, it doesn't do so. So if you use it into the shield, well, sucks for you. You're losing a lot of damage for no reason. So be patient and think ahead. And for our next champion, we also have to think ahead, because we have to know about the taxes we have to pay. That sounds weird, right? But if you play against the Z, you're basically forced to pay a specific tax, aka buying a stasis enchant. If you don't buy this, he'll one-shot you at a certain point in the game and there's nothing you can do about it. And not only that, his damage is quite insane even without his ultimate ability later on. But if he is fat, for example, he will just use his second ability into your face, use his third and first ability and you're one-shot from the electrocute proc. And if you're really unfortunate, he is ulting onto your top using his second ability and then there's 3 shadows. 3. Well, 2, including him. And then you get hit by 3 of his third abilities, which all deal damage by the way, which doesn't happen in League of Legends PC. So that's a lot of extra damage you have to take into consideration and then you just disappear. So please buy the stasis enchant and please ruin a Zed's day. Because if you have the stasis enchant, he has to at least consider it and think ahead, and if he doesn't, well, it's a dub for you. And the same thing applies to his laning phase. A Zed in lane has to be relatively passive in the early levels. The only thing he can do on level 1 is poke you. Depending on how much he has poked you with his first ability, he can then look for an all-in on level 2, and the same thing goes for level 3. However, the entire dynamic of matchup changes once he hits level 5, because on level 5, with the access to his ultimate ability combined with Ignite, and the fact that he can never miss a single spell if he autocasts everything, well, you best believe what happens to you. And once Zed is snowballing, your Dragon Lane is not gonna have any kind of fun in the future. And if you get into a situation in which you have to play against him, please respect Fog of War. Most champions cannot just walk after them, because if the assassin waits for somebody that walks after him, for example a control mage, the assassin will just kill the control mage. And then it's just not worth it for you. Be prepared and be aware. And think of the things you can do if the Zed goes roaming. For example, pushing the wave and hovering the side you saw him not leave towards to. That way you can get an experience lead and some gold lead without putting your life at risk for no reason. However, you also have to keep in mind that your team will most likely not realize that this was your only available play and they'll flame you. So, well, it is what it is. I'm sorry for this. And that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching and make sure to hit the sub button to see more of our videos in the future. And with that, see you tomorrow.